In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 NBA games happening on December 26, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Boston Celtics versus Indiana Pacers. The Celtics are still rolling without Jason Tatum and Chris Boucher, and the Pacers are missing Aaron Nesmith, Ben Shepherd, and Isaiah Jackson, so both rotations are stretched a bit thin and have to lean on role players more than they would like. Boston has quietly turned into one of the hotter teams in the league, both straight up and against the spread, while Indiana is still nursing injuries and stumbling through this stretch, which can mess with confidence and rotations alike. Here is the thing, though: these two just saw each other in Boston earlier this week, and that game finished with only an 8-point gap, which does not really scream mismatch when you think about how strong Boston is at home. Usually, the second meeting in a short window feels more like a chess match. Both coaching staffs adjust. The underdog remembers what worked, and the gap often shrinks, especially when the rematch moves to the underdog's home floor like it does here in Indiana. Boston has won 7 of the last 10 head-to-head, which sounds dominant, but Indiana has actually covered the spread in 8 of those 10, so the market has tended to shade too far toward the Celtics, while the Pacers hang around just enough to cash tickets. Honestly, this number feels too thick for a banged-up road favorite facing a familiar opponent that has a history of covering in this series. So taking the points with Indiana makes more sense than laying a premium with Boston here. As our first pick for this matchup, the Indiana Pacers to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Their matchup on Monday landed at a combined 198 points, which fell well short of the posted total and gave a pretty clear picture of how choppy the offense can look when these versions of the teams share the floor. Both sides are missing their main offensive engines, which puts more on secondary creators and bench scorers, and that usually means more empty trips, more late clock possessions, and fewer of those effortless runs that push a total into the high 200s. The Pacers, in particular, have had trouble even getting to the 100-point mark consistently during this losing slide, and that kind of repeated struggle is usually as much about rhythm and spacing as it is about talent, especially when lineups keep changing. Boston has shown they are perfectly comfortable winning ugly, slowing things down into half-court sets, grinding on defense, and trusting that they can squeeze value out of every possession instead of turning games into track meets. Unless Indiana suddenly catches fire from 3-point range and strings together one of those outlier shooting nights that flips the script, this has every chance to stay in the low 210s, with long stretches that feel more like a playoff-style grind than a regular season shootout. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total, is our full game total pick. Charlotte Hornets versus Orlando Magic. The Hornets roll into the Kia Center still shorthanded, with Mason Plumlee, Grant Williams, and Ryan Kalkbrenner all listed out again, so their front court depth and rotations are still patched together more than they would like. On the other side, the Magic are also dealing with familiar absences, with Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, and Moritz Wagner ruled out once more, which explains why this line is sitting shorter than you might expect for a team that handled this opponent comfortably back on October 30th. In that first meeting, Orlando controlled things in a 123-107 win, and that type of result usually sticks in the back of a young team's mind, even if the rosters are not at full strength now. Charlotte does come in with a little bit of confidence after hammering the Wizards in their last outing, and that kind of feel-good win can bleed into the next game, especially for a group that has been searching for positive momentum most of the year. They have actually found ways to cash tickets lately, covering 6 of their last 8, so you can absolutely argue that grabbing the points with a team that is finally competing more consistently is not crazy at all. The catch is that the Hornets have been rough on the road pretty much all season, and there is still a prove-it tax on them whenever they leave home, because the effort and focus tend to dip when the environment is tougher. Orlando, even in its current banged-up state, still feels like the steadier group, and the history between these two sides backs that up, with the Magic sitting at 9 wins and 1 loss both straight up and against the spread in the last 10 head-to-head meetings. At the same time, it is worth noting the Magic have been a money burner lately, going 1-8-1 against the spread over their last 10 and sitting at 12-17-1 against the spread on the season, so you are paying for a team that has not been filling bettors' pockets recently. Even with that, the recent history in this matchup has been heavily tilted, and the Hornets' ongoing road issues still hang over this spot, so I would lean toward the home side having a better chance to cover again here. As our first pick for this matchup, the Orlando Magic to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Hornets are averaging 115.4 points on 45.5% shooting, which is solid enough, but they are allowing 118.8 points on 48.9% shooting, so opponents are getting plenty of clean looks. From the perimeter, Charlotte is hitting 35.9% of its threes and knocking down free throws at an 81.6% clip, which helps them keep their scoreboard moving even when the offense bogs down in the half court. Defensively, though, they are allowing opponents to shoot 38.3% from deep, and while they are grabbing about 44.4 rebounds per game, that leaky three-point defense can turn into sudden runs that push totals higher if left unchecked. Orlando's offensive and defensive splits look similar in some ways, but with a slightly different balance, as the Magic are averaging 117.2 points on 46.8% shooting while giving up 114.8 points on 47.8% shooting. They are a bit less accurate from 3, sitting at 34.3% from beyond the arc, and they hit 78.9% at the foul line, which is decent but not quite the same cushion Charlotte enjoys at the stripe. On the defensive side, the Magic are allowing 35.7% from deep and pulling down about 45 rebounds per game, which suggests they can close possessions reasonably well when they lock in, especially at home. When you blend those splits with the injuries on both sides and the fact that some key offensive pieces are not on the floor, there is a decent chance that scoring comes in a tick lower than the raw season averages suggest, and I would lean toward a game that lands under a high projected total rather than a full-on shootout. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Miami Heat versus Atlanta Hawks. The Miami Heat head into State Farm Arena on Friday still shorthanded, with Tyler Herro sidelined and both Kesha Johnson and Bam Adebayo sitting in that uncomfortable, questionable bucket that keeps everyone refreshing injury reports all afternoon. On the other side, the Atlanta Hawks have ruled out Kristaps Porzingis again and have Muhammad Guy listed as questionable with a shoulder issue, so they are juggling their own rotation concerns. Miami is stuck in its worst slump of the season, which is not exactly encouraging, but there is at least a hint of light with Pelle Larsson and Nikola Jovic upgraded to probable, and that kind of bench help can matter more than people think in a regular season grind. The funny thing is, the Hawks have not really taken advantage of Miami's slide. They have gone cold themselves since Trae Young came back, which is the opposite of what fans were expecting when their star guard returned. Miami has reverted to that version of the team from last year where getting to 100 points feels like pulling teeth, lots of grinding possessions, not a lot of easy buckets. Even so, it is fair to ask what exactly Atlanta has done lately to justify being favored here, with 8 losses in its last 10 games and a 3-6-1 record against the spread during that stretch, which is not exactly a resume of trust. The Heat at least have the getting healthier storyline working for them, and they have taken 6 of the last 9 meetings against the Hawks, which hints that they are comfortable in this matchup when they show up with focus. Atlanta is only 5-9 straight up at home this season, which kind of undercuts any strong home court argument and makes this feel more like a neutral mindset spot than a hostile environment for Miami. So while you would not feel great backing either team with full confidence, the slightly healthier Heat, with their recent success in this matchup, look like the side that can sneak out a result if they simply play to their level for 4 quarters, which makes taking the points with them the more reasonable angle. As our first pick for this matchup, the Miami Heat to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Trae Young's return has not brought stability, and the more this group struggles with him in the lineup, the easier it is to imagine trade talks heating up around his name as the deadline creeps closer. Over the last 4 games, the Hawks have allowed around 125.8 points per 100 possessions, which plants them near the very bottom of the league defensively during that span, and that kind of number usually comes from a mix of poor effort, slow rotations, and bad communication. Jalen Johnson keeps flirting with triple-doubles and looks like a bright spot every night, but when the collective defensive effort is this shaky, those stat lines end up buried under another loss and another inflated box score from the opponent. These two teams have somehow combined for only 4 wins in their last 20 games, which makes this matchup feel like guessing which struggling offense and defense will click first on any given night, and that always adds a bit of chaos to total projections. Even with that uncertainty, it is hard to ignore the scoring pattern, with Atlanta seeing the overcash in 6 of its last 8 games and even giving up 152 points to the Chicago Bulls in regulation not long ago, which is the kind of number you usually only see in video games. Miami still has the ability to score, even if it has felt like hard work lately, and what it really needs is an opponent that consistently blows assignments and loses focus on that end of the floor, which fits Atlanta's recent profile almost perfectly. So if you have to pick a side on the number of points scored rather than who comes out on top, the recent trends, the defensive issues, and the matchup lean toward a game that finds its way over the projected total rather than settling into a low-scoring grind. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Toronto Raptors versus Washington Wizards. The Toronto Raptors head into Capital One Arena on Friday still without Jakob Poeltl and RJ Barrett, so their frontcourt and primary scoring hierarchy are not quite at full strength yet. The Washington Wizards are missing Corey Kispert and Cam Whitmore again, which does not help a group that already struggles to keep games competitive for 4 quarters. Even with the Raptors dealing with their own issues, a lot of this matchup really comes back to how rough Washington has been for bettors this season. They keep stacking losses, and they are sitting at 10-18 against the spread, which is the kind of record that quietly drains anyone who keeps trusting them game after game. It is hard to build any kind of model or gut feeling around a team that so often fails to stay close, even when the line looks generous on paper. Toronto is far from perfect, but there are a couple of clear positives that give them a real platform in this spot. 10 of their 18 wins have come on the road, which suggests they travel reasonably well for a team that has been up and down overall. On top of that, they have handled this specific matchup lately, going 8-2 straight up and against the spread in the last 10 meetings with the Wizards. That kind of repeated success hints at a stylistic edge, not just a one-off fluke. There is also the memory of that 140-110 win back on November 21st, where Toronto simply ran away from Washington and never really looked back. You probably should not expect a copy and paste of that blowout, but it does show what happens when the Raptors lock in and the Wizards do their usual thing on defense. Toronto also just looked sharp in a big win over the Heat on Tuesday, which is exactly the kind of performance that can shake a team out of its funk and give it a bit of short-term swagger. So while the Raptors have had their own dips, the combination of their road form, their history against Washington, and the ongoing Wizards struggles makes it hard to see much reason to trust the home side. Odds makers are telling you how little they think of the Wizards right now, and it is tough to argue when you look at the recent results and the way their games unravel. All of that nudges this spot toward Toronto being the more reliable favorite to get the job done against the spread, even if they are not a perfect team by any stretch. As our first pick for this matchup, the Toronto Raptors to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Raptors are averaging 113.5 points on 47.9% shooting from the field, which shows they can score efficiently when their offense is organized and the ball moves. They allow 111.7 points on 46.2% shooting, so they are solid but not smothering on defense, more good enough than lockdown. From long range, they are hitting 36% of their threes and knocking down 76.6% of their free throws, which keeps their offense afloat even on nights when the rim attacks are not perfect. They are also allowing opponents to shoot 33.7% from deep and grabbing about 42.5 rebounds per game, which helps them finish possessions but still leaves room for opponents to find scoring windows. The Wizards, on the other hand, bring a very different energy to the scoring environment. They are averaging 112.6 points on 45.9% shooting, so they can absolutely put the ball in the basket, especially when they get into a rhythm in transition. The real headline is on the other side of the ball, where they are giving up a massive 126.1 points on 47.6% shooting, which is the kind of profile that turns almost every game into a track meet. From 3, they are hitting 35.7% and making 74.8% at the line, while allowing opponents to shoot 37% from deep and giving up clean looks far too often. They do grab about 43.9 rebounds per game, but that volume is somewhat inflated by how many missed shots their defense creates for the other team. When you blend those splits, you get a matchup where one side scores efficiently and the other side plays in a way that encourages pace, loose defense, and long stretches of back and forth scoring. We have already seen Toronto hang 140 on Washington this season, and while that is an extreme outcome, it still hints at how high the ceiling can be when these two meet and the Wizards do not get stops. With the Raptors' shooting efficiency and the Wizards' habit of turning games into open floor contests, this sets up as the kind of spot where the total can push higher than the raw season averages might suggest at first glance. So if you are forced to pick a lane on the number of points scored rather than the winner, the statistical profile and recent history lean toward this matchup finishing above the projected total, with both teams doing enough offensively to get there. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Philadelphia 76ers versus Chicago Bulls. The Sixers come into this one still without Kelly Oubre Jr., and they are monitoring Joel Embiid, VJ Edgecombe, and Quentin Grimes, with all three sitting in that annoying questionable range that makes planning a game script tricky. On the other side, the Bulls are expecting to have a full squad, which is a luxury in a season where most teams are juggling absences almost every night. These teams last saw each other on November 4th when Chicago slipped out with a 113-111 win, and it would not be shocking at all if we get another tight finish, especially with both sides coming in on a bit of a positive run. The problem from a betting standpoint is that the lingering injury cloud over Philadelphia really tilts things toward Chicago being the rightful favorite at home, even if the raw talent on the Sixers roster is higher when everyone plays. Philly has actually been kind to bettors overall, sitting at a 17-10-1 record against the spread, which tells you that when the market thinks it has them figured out, they still often outperform expectations. The issue is that with so many names bouncing between questionable and available, it is hard to trust any single projection for this team until you are almost a tip-off. Honestly, when the injury report looks like a CVS receipt, how are you supposed to feel sharp about their true level on any given night? That is where the Bulls have a small but real edge. They are relatively settled, they are winning again, and that confidence shows up in late-game execution, which matters a lot in matchups that have already shown they can come down to 1 or 2 possessions, like that 2-point meeting in November. On top of that, Chicago has now won 3 straight games against the Sixers, which is not everything, but it does hint that they are comfortable with the matchup and the physical style it usually brings. With all of that, taking the small number with the healthier and more stable home team feels more sensible than guessing which version of the short-handed Sixers shows up. You might not feel thrilled backing either side blindly, but the lean goes to Chicago covering in front of its own crowd while Philly tries to sort through yet another messy injury report. As our first pick for this matchup, the Chicago Bulls to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full-game side pick. This Bulls group plays a style that mirrors Atlanta in some ways, with a casual relationship to defense but the ability to put up a lot of points in a short burst when shots fall and the pace picks up. You would think that kind of approach would automatically send totals soaring every time, but the recent history between these two teams tells a different story. Over the last 10 meetings, not that many points have actually been scored on average, with the over and under record sitting at 1-9 in that stretch and an average of around 215.1 points per game. That is a pretty clear sign that whatever offensive reputations these teams carry, their games against each other tend to slow down or tighten up just enough to drag the totals under. Odds makers are still hanging an ambitious number for this matchup, and it jumps out as a lot when you stack it against that head-to-head scoring history. The under has also cashed in 5 straight meetings at the United Center and in Chicago's last 6 home games overall, which suggests that the building itself has become a bit of a magnet for slightly lower scoring nights lately. From the Sixers side, the under is 6-3 in their last 9 overall and 4-2 in their last 6 against Eastern Conference opponents, which fits the idea of a team that can get stuck in grinding, half-court games, especially when key scores are compromised or missing. Layer all of that together, and the data points in the same direction, hinting at a game that leans more toward controlled, somewhat lower scoring stretches rather than a full-track meet. So if you have to choose a lane on the total, the weight of the recent trends and the series history nudges this matchup toward the under on the projected number, with both teams doing enough to compete but not quite enough to break the scoring ceiling that the line suggests. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.